Man, I'm always looking for that sweet spot between the changes in between, to get like the really sweet spot. Hello everyone, this is your friend Carlz with another week of comic books. This week there were a lot of like in between numbers, a lot of stuff that I'm following and I'm quite excited for, but they're basically, like in the middle of the story arcs. Superman or Superboy Prime in this case, Spider-Man. I'm waiting for an update in all of them. So even though the strong ones keep pulling strong, Absolute Wonder Woman and Spider-Man, I have my things to say about Spider-Man, but let's wait after the next issue. So I picked things that are a bit more. It's like the anniversary edition, in a way, and a couple of interesting number ones, some new ideas, but the couple of anniversaries were enough for me. So let's dive right into this week. Oh no, I meant to comment on Avengers Avengers Doomsday trailer, which we finally got to see publicly. And there's no secret that I'm not the biggest lover of the MCU. I've said plenty of times that I think it is mostly a failed project. Of course, it ended up kind of like creating the whole superhero hellscape that we live nowadays in movies and TV. But just seeing all of these characters back on screen, it should make you excited, but it just makes you more like, nah. It's a curious thing. Like, they showed most of the characters that they already said that they were gonna be in it. So what's the difference? Did the trailer really reveal anything? I mean, you can watch those 1 hour nitpicking videos. Like, I don't know, man, I don't have time for that shit. Like, just watching it just doesn't provoke anything in me. And well, nothing has changed, but the fact remains that even if that sort of media doesn't attract me anymore, it just brings me back to comics. That's just what it is. I would rather now read Captain America's and Doctor Doom's adventures in hell than watching the movie. I mentioned several times before as well how this live action Marvel Cinematic Universe is so constrained by the actors. So while some people might find exciting or not groundbreaking, but as many people could probably, or they do probably find that Chris Evans is back as Captain America and whatever, like, I'm just like thinking, man, how long will we have the same dudes? How does that work? How is that gonna work? I've said it before. Not having Steve Rogers and Tony Stark is just some fucked up thing. And even if you go like, okay, he's coming back again, yeah, but is he gonna come back again and again? Is he gonna stay? We know he won't. We know he can't. So, whatever, man. It's just what it is. Overall, it's an Avengers trailer. It's fun. And probably like, nah, I better not say that I'm gonna watch it at the theater. I don't know. They're probably gonna start spoiling that shit like 1 week before, right? That's just how the cookie crumbles nowadays. You have like what, probably a day or two before your movie opens, and you have maybe a day before everybody in the internet knows what your movie is about. We are at that stage of affairs. It's like crazy, like literally crazy. But as I said before, this brings us back to comic books and how they are this warm little corner where we can just sleep away, dream away. Let's just call it dream away. It's a little bit more friendly. So let's go to talk what I have or what I'm really interested this week. Let's go. Starting by Action Comics Landmark 1100th issue. That is so funny. I found it really curious that they are going with that number. Since years ago they started embracing the whole concept of the legacy numbering. I think they have become a little bit like excited, or they make such a big deal about it. But this is a curious occasion for this landmark 1100th issue, because it happens right in the middle of the reign of the Superboys. It's not even an event, it's just the main narrative of the Superman books overall right now at DC. Superman is gone after the DC's KO tournament. We don't know shit about him. So this landmark issue for Action Comics turns out to be really interesting, because now we're gonna know somehow a little bit of what's going on with Superman. It's obvious. It's obvious they're gonna use this as a platform to let us know a little bit of current Superman, where he is, when is he coming back. And of course, with these celebratory issues, you have a bunch of big names: Mark Waid, Joshua Williamson, Dan Slott, Ryan Sook, Dan Mora. You have a bunch of creators coming together to celebrate this landmark. But as I said, this one is particularly interesting because it's like, let's celebrate a character's book without the character. There's no way that this is gonna not use this chance, this opportunity, to talk a little bit more of the whereabouts of Kal-El. We can argue whether it's too soon or whether it's soon enough for him to come back. The main story arc with Superboy Prime, I don't think it's halfway through. The same with John Kent, like the main guys, in a way, right? I don't know. Let's see what surprise they deliver in this Action Comics landmark book. As I said, a special one because it's in the context of the reign of the Superboys. Quite a thing. But it's Superman. Next. So, Chris Claremont, basically the guy who everybody goes back when they talk about X-Men. I have mixed feelings about him, in a way that, okay, he did a good run, one of the great run. He, I don't know, laid down the groundwork for everything X-Men after whatever. You can say everything that you want to say, and it's probably true, but I always feel weird when they bring him back. It's like, oh, he's gonna write a story about when in between X-Men issue, I don't know, from the 90s and another issue from the, it's like he's gonna tell a new story, but from his run, from his past, which is always weird. But why am I interested in this one in particular? Because it's not just because it's about Gambit, but because Gambit is going through some stuff in Uncanny X-Men. And I like that they sort of frame this Gambit Wanted #1 with sort of I don't know how true it's gonna be to that press release, by saying that they're gonna show you a story that is relevant to Gambit's origins. I might be overstepping my expectations and thinking that they sort of coordinated this Gambit Wanted with what's going on with Uncanny X-Men, and instead of just being another story about the the Thieves Guild and he's the prince or whatever, like that same story that we've seen a bunch of times. You know, it's in the past, so it's unlikely that they're gonna retcon something that big, but I like it. I don't know if this is a level of coordination as the one that DC has been putting on their books, but I like it that we get a Gambit, not origin story, but like a Gambit story from the past to sort of remind us what he's going through in the present. That is the good mix that we're seeing here. Gambit is not my favorite character. It's never been my favorite character. But Rogue is my favorite X-Men. So, and they are partners in crime and in life. So Gambit wanted number one, Chris Claremont back to tell a story from the past, but let's use it to make the present spicier. Next. So another X-Men book. Now they're doing this. It's not I don't think this is replacing the Hellfire Gala, right? I'm not sure that they're replacing the Hellfire Gala with this, but this Hellfire Murder, it's another get together of X-Men's with a bunch of stories with like a bunch of big names, Gail Simon, Erika Schultz, Saladin Ahmed. There's a lot of big names in this event. I don't know how it is gonna be part of the current X-Men event, and they didn't make that much of a big deal as they have been doing with the gala for the past like 5 years. Like we've gotten accustomed to having the preview of whatever they're wearing or to expect something big to happen in the Hellfire Gala. But in this case, this Hellfire Murder hasn't been properly hyped up, and it seems to come up in a moment where all of the characters involved, like most of the X-Men, are doing quite separate stuff. They are going not necessarily in extremely different ways, so that makes you feel or having like an understanding that this is gonna be like a solo story, like a cute thing to do. It might be just that. It might not have like a real impact on what they're doing, but some of the previews have been showing what was the preview that I as I said, I don't like reading that many previews. I like to go clean to the books, but this post about a potential romance between Cyclops and Psylocke, and I'm like, wasn't Psylocke with that other guy, the John something, man, and that guy that he's like Jax from Mortal Kombat. He has two mechanical arms. I don't know, but this was just a fun thing to experience, whether it be the gala or the murder. And last but not least, I find it really funny that for those of you who can't see the cover, so there's Wolverine hunched over the that outline they make where like somebody's murdered or someone dies and they create an outline of where their body was. So they did that, and inside they put like the Hellfire Club logo, that H. But I saw the cover and I'm like, why is Wolverine looking at the Prince logo? I shit you not. The first thing I thought was like, why is Wolverine looking at the Prince logo? What the fuck? Is Prince gonna be in this book? What the hell, man? Like, and of course it's just a reference to there being a murder and the outline, but it looks like fucking Prince logo. Who has the rights to like the likeness of Prince? Like somebody on his estate must have it, like Prince, the Prince Company or something, But anyways, the Hellfire Murder, I hope it doesn't replace the gala, because I like the gala. Apologies, I drank some lemonade. It was stronger than I thought it would be. Next. So this is my book of the week. Trying to go into some of the other publishers, even though they have the how do you call it, the usual suspects. That is the term. And so I've seen a lot of good press about what is this called, Ignition, right? I don't know. Like it's really hard to keep track of all of these things. Ignition Press and like back when I expanded my horizons beyond basically Marvel and DC, of course, then you go to Image, and then you go to all of these things that spawn out of Image, and then you see some IP at Dynamite, or like some classics names, or something you're interested at Dark Horse. But the deeper you are into the whole comic book scene, the bigger it becomes. That's just a fact. And even though sometimes we can probably think that they are like not as big, like there's no way there's so many comic books, but there are so many comic books, and there are plenty of spaces for creators to write their stories and just go crazy. I haven't read anything from this publisher, but as I said, I've read some like nice reviews about it, and you need to try to sort of make yourself known as a publisher, because okay, you have Marvel, you have DC, they are like the big mainstreams, and like they're never gonna go that hard, but basically Image Comics cover all of that shit. Like everything that is not there, basically Image Comics covers all of that. Like fucking all of that. That's just how it is. Like extreme politics, I don't know, violence, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, whatever you want to call it, right? Everything's covered. So the point is, it's really hard to get into a new publisher just because sometimes you go by author, sometimes you go by the art, and in this case is by the author. Tini Howard recently talked about her with what was that name of that Image Comics? Was it Image? I think it was. It wasn't Comics, but the one Marian, the one about the warrior nun, right? Like, I don't have like many reference from her. I liked her Catwoman run, something interesting in Power Rangers, but I feel like when they have this chance to create these sort of solo books, there's always a surprise. So what I'm trying to say is that, okay, you wanna branch out, you wanna try different publishers, and you go, okay, what's interesting, and you get to Sicko, which is basically like how was described, like a sickly girl, but like her sickness is her power. She can weaponize her immune system. I don't know. I thought that the premise was really creepy and interesting, and sometimes you really are down for some body horror type of violence. So I found it interesting, and come on, the author was interesting. Sometimes you gotta broaden your horizons, try different things. Though, if I'm being like a little bit more self-critical with myself, perhaps I shouldn't. I still haven't finished the whole what was that book? The one that I was I even forgot its name. The one with the Allomancer shit. Man. Sanderson's book. is his name, man? I have just the biggest brain fog, but whatever. I shouldn't be adding more comics when I haven't finished the books, because by now I see books as an extra to comics. So I read comics plus some books. So I better watch it. I better watch it. Next. So Robert Kirkman is back with another book, another new one called Terminal, with Joe Casey nonetheless, whom I talked about recently when I was talking about Ben 10, right? I think he's the one doing Ben 10. I don't know. You always say, or at least try a Robert Kirkman book. The description of this Terminal is not that exciting. It seems like it's like classic superhero violence. Even though I haven't read Invincible, I'm pretty sure it goes that way as well. Like controversial, violent superhero stories. Whenever I gotta think, or I think about Invincible, the first thing that comes into my mind is how unappealing I find the look of the characters. There's something about books that want to make a commentary on superheroes that somehow directly relates to how lame the characters look. It's like, they just don't look the part. It's like they look like generic. It's like I'm gonna be a parody of Superman, so I look like a generic Superman knockoff. I'm gonna be a parody of the Flash, so I look like a generic Flash parody. You know what I mean? And when something looks like that, it doesn't feel that appealing. So why am I taking a chance in Terminal? Because of Invincible. That's it. Like I don't wanna go like into Invincible. I can't be bothered, like, for some reason. So this is almost the same. At least it's the same creator, and it has a similar vibe to Invincible. Violent superheroes. Come on. Will it be necessarily a replacement to Invincible? I have no idea. But if the press release says so, well, maybe they are onto something that I don't. Terminal, Kirkman, Casey, Image Comics. Next. So, did I gave my book of the week? I think I got confused because I want to make this my book of the week. Well, whatever. If I said that the previous book was my book of the week, don't listen to me. This is my book of the week. IDW's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, celebrating the 300th issue of the Ninja Turtles. As I've said before, if you have ever listened to me talking about comics, I was never into the Turtles comic. I began reading it into this new run because they brought Jason Aaron to write the Turtles, and the first 2 story arcs led by him were quite interesting. Were like a lot to my liking. It has some feels of like you could get into this, that is the biggest thing, and that is a one thing that is going to happen always when you have like these really long running stories and characters. It's like try to tell someone to get into One Piece now. Okay, you have 3,000 numbers to rely on. I would like to go back to. That doesn't happen in Western comics mostly because they do jumping points, they do soft resets, they do number ones. They always have new mechanics, and you could call them techniques, to bring in new readers. And I think Jason Aaron's beginner run, or like beginning of his run with the Turtles, was inviting enough. All you needed to know was who were the 4 turtles. But then they brought Jin Luen Yang, and it kind of like went to the deep end. It was funny because they sort of forgot the whole state of affairs that they were before, and they just went into another way. And I'm like, what happened to what they were doing before. It was crazy. So why is this issue 300 so important for someone like me? Because this is their chance to sort of highlight what they're gonna do with this IP going forward. I always have, so I think perhaps I have higher expectations of what they do for these type of specials. Because even if they did a soft reset for the turtles for people to jump in, they started spreading immediately like wildfire with a bunch of solo titles and parallel timelines. They went crazy, and I haven't followed any of those. I only read the Turtles and the Shredder book, which is also so. So I just hope they use this opportunity, this 300th issue special, to sort of bring it all down, man. That's my point. Go not back to roots, but give you a more solid base. Somehow the base you have for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, if you grew up during the 90s, it's just that fucking image of these cartoon turtles, but it has been like 40 years and shit. So you can't just expect people to jump into a book about the turtles with just that bare knowledge. Back then, the only one that, the title track used to say, Leo was the leader, Donnie was the creator, Mikey was the Joker. But that sort of characterization is so simple, and they have gone through so much shit. Will this 300th issue make a holistic picture to be delivered for us who are new to this book? Because I am new. I'm not new to the Turtles. I was alive when they were on their peak, but I never read the comics until the current run. This is the 300th issue, but of this current numbering is issue number 20. So I only read 20 Turtles books, and I haven't felt like it has been inviting this current run. I don't. I don't. So let's see what they do. I'm not sure it is the number 300 at all. Like, I have no idea, man. Like, if they are telling me this is an important issue, an important special, I'm just gonna dive into it with that mentality, and that is what I'm expecting. Next, Joshua Williamson appears again with issue number 2 of Blood of the Wolfman. I wasn't that much of a big fan of the first issue. I think werewolf stories are complicated. The past Wolfman movie, which was supposed to be, I think it was an adaptation of a story they have been preparing for the Dark Universe thing. These universal monsters, they are these sort of like seeds to create. They have shown the potential to be something like important, as it happened with the Invisible Man. The latest Invisible Man was a great update to the concept, because these monsters are just reflections of society. So the Invisible Man was a reflection of some sort of perversion, what you don't want to be seen in society. Lee Cronin's The Mummy, which was a quite mediocre movie, also played on the updating of the concept. This is just not just a mummy from ancient Egypt. In Lee Cronin's The Mummy is a concept as well. as some sort of torture for the new souls of, you know. And the Wolfman, they try to do something similar. And the Wolfman should be the easiest concept to adapt to any timeline, because basically the Wolfman is the animal spirit, literally, of a person. So it just means that you can unleash, not even like the deeper desires of a person, but like their animality. And I think in that sense, the latest Wolfman movie was interesting. It sort of achieved that to a point. You know, it's like, okay, there were, in the case of this movie, spoilers, what the main character was holding in, what needed to be unleashed by the wolf, was his trauma as a child. He had a lot of trauma that he kept inside, that he would restrain on himself, and he would get this burst of well, okay, it's a spoiler. He eventually leads to his death, right? But like, or quote unquote death, because basically his trauma just explodes in the form of a monster. This version, The Blood of the Wolfman, began in a much more traditional way, in a much more like slasher type. The monster is out, nobody knows who did it. So we are a little bit astray from the classic. The Wolfman is a projection of the person who is becoming the wolf. It's just a projection of his desires or like repressed feelings or emotions. It didn't begin as that, but it clearly is going that way. And you know, these classic universal monsters, they are like such a weird bunch, because some of them allow for this expansion while others don't. So Image has done almost all of them, right? They did a wolf, they did the Mummy, they did the Phantom of the Opera, they did, and some of them got a deserved upgrade or update, and some of them don't. Like in the case of Dracula by James Tynion. Dracula was really interesting because it wasn't an updated version, but the narration of the comic went back a little bit to the third person. Like it went back to what is that term where somebody is telling their experience. Like I'm not the one who lived the experience, but I'm like telling you a second-hand account. I think that is. The same thing happened with the monster of the Black Lagoon. It was totally shown from a different perspective, the perspective of the victim, but in a much deeper way. The monster was almost never even there. But Phantom of the Opera stick to more classic sides of the story. You know, so you can balance things around. Overall, they've been okay, but I'm still like looking for that new flair of things. And now that Robert Eggers is doing a new movie based on the Wolfman, is like not based on the universal monsters the Wolfman, but in the myth of the Wolfman, he's going back to the past again, and that's his forte. You know, so we won't be seeing any update to the concept of the Wolfman anytime soon. And in this book, really not that much either. So, but anyways, it's fun, and I could consume these monster stories forever. I just hope they had a little bit more of an edge in the modern sense, like they were a little bit more challenging, but it's fine. And last but not least, for some reason I just recommended Wolverine, but I felt like recommending it again because I don't know what it is about Wolverine that, and you know how I always I talk about Spider-Man's kind of like the traditional sequence of a Spider-Man story, where like Peter is fine, then Peter is not, then he's fine and he's not. Wolverine has something similar to him, but it's mostly based on his vulnerability. Most of Wolverine's stories, they go around this myth, the biggest Wolverine myth of his immortality. That's the whole point, right? Wolverine is indestructible. He's gonna live forever. He's never gonna die. But from last time I recommended Wolverine, he was going to face Taskmaster, and what was basically revealed is that someone is somehow stealing Wolverine's healing factor. And I don't know. I thought it was quite a creative idea. And I don't know. I think it was a creative idea to instead of just taking the power away, making it like somebody stole it. It's just like such a miserable little detail, but it was more than enough. It just made me think about this whole Wolverine cycle of being vulnerable, then being invulnerable, just being vulnerable. But it just goes to show for these long-running characters and stories that all it takes for it to have a new flair is just to give it a little bit of a spin. He's not just dying, he's not just losing his powers, somebody is stealing them. And often I recommend books with like tiny things or tiny details, tiny things that make me curious, and that is the case for the current run of Wolverine. Basically, that is the case for this book, and that is why I'm recommending it. I think that the fact that his healing factor is not, he's not losing it, but he's being stolen, I think it's fun. And that's it. So that's a week. As I said, I try to stay away from many number 2s or number 3s. I don't know. Let's just say it like it. I try to stay away from the story arcs that are in the middle or in transitional moments. So I would have to comment them once they go through that hurdle or they go through the current point they are in their stories. But anyways, that's another week. And as you say, and as I often say, just one week leads to the next one. Nothing else to comment. There's nothing. Wait, when is the Lantern series coming back? I don't know. One final shout out to the final issue of Absolute Martian Manhunter. I think I recommended it some time ago, and they nailed it. If you haven't read Absolute Martian Manhunter, just give it a go. They nailed it. The whole psychedelia of the whole run, they finished it in, I'm not gonna spoil it, but they finished it in a really surprising way by taking some fundamental concept of the DC universe and taking them into this absolute format and just giving it such a creative empathic spin. It was emotional, and above everything, it was impactful for the Absolute Universe. It was great. The ending was great, and the whole run was great. I said, how is it gonna connect to the rest of the Absolute Universe? Now it's clear how it's gonna connect. Now it's clear, and it's important. So that's one final shout out for this week's episode, and nothing else to say. But have a good one, get some good reads, and don't drop your books. I need to finish that fucking Mistborn. Is it Mistborn? It's Mistborn, man. I need to finish that shit, man. But I'm reading comics. See you, everybody. Thank you for listening. See you all next week. Bye-bye.